Hello and thank you for joining us for Evolve TV, where we uncover the secrets of how aftermarket workshops can improve, optimise and systemise their businesses. I'm your host Jason O, and in this episode we discover how we can convert more callers into customers. We discuss the various approaches repairers are using to price up jobs, including some of the risks that they may be exposing themselves to. We learn some actionable tips and tricks that viewers can use to ensure they win and retain more customers in today's highly competitive market. To share this with us, we're joined by our special guest, Zach Walker. As part of the leading Evolve workshop program by Mechanic.com.au, Evolve TV helps aftermarket workshops discover how to become more connected with the marketplace, their customers, their staff, as well as other leading aftermarket workshops. Learn how to leverage digital platforms and tools as well as best business practices in order to run a more efficient and innovative automotive service and repair business. This is Evolve TV. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thanks, Jason.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
With Repco, I've been with the company for about 10 years, but primarily I look after all of our trade catalogue and trade solutions. So all the things that help workshops operate, manage their business, not just our parts, but a whole bunch of other add-on systems that can help them as well. Been working through systems for the last 8 years, and we've had some really, really new, great experiences there. We've had 3 successes with innovation awards through the AAA for different systems. It's a really big growth space for us because we're seeing workshops need not just support in finding parts, but also how they fit them, what they need to do to service a customer and share that information that they have fitted them with the customer, keep those customers coming back.
Getting a bit of a vibe that you're quite passionate about helping workshops.
Yes. Yeah, we are. It's a big part. We have a lot of programs that we spend a lot of time talking to customers, understanding them. A really big thing that we push is nothing we've designed hasn't been off an idea that's come from a customer. Everything comes from what they think their experience is and them sharing that information back with us, and then us trying to build and improve on what they're doing today so that it's future-proof and ready for tomorrow.
You have an interesting background, to say the least. What do you believe are the main challenges facing workshops when they're looking to win jobs in today's market?
Well, there's a couple of different factors. I think one of the biggest one is time. It really robs a workshop, one, of productivity, but 2, of the opportunity to turn that call into a customer. If you have to hang up to call back to give a quote, to find out the information you need to make sure that that quote's accurate, while you're working on that, the customer's working to find another person. They're quoting through somebody else. It's really important to make sure that they have the information there ready on hand so you can talk to the customer and turn that into a booking without having to hang up the phone.
Challenge is not to lose them.
And a big part of not losing them is engaging with them about what's happening on that vehicle. So it's not just about building the quote and the price and making sure that it's financially viable for you to offer that service to the customer, but it's also really important that you can explain what you're doing to the car and what you're doing to look after that customer's vehicle.
There is a lot going on, and it's not just one thing, and you've got to be able to sort of recognise what the biggest hurdle is to keep that customer, because that's the number one focus.
The value is the care for the vehicle, not just putting on the parts. So when you put your family into the car or you're driving, you know that you've got the confidence that what's been done is right. And you've got to explain that to them. The days of walking a customer underneath a hoist to show them and talk to them are gone. And that's why it's really important to share that information, talk them through, and use those systems that give you that information so that you can do it right at that point, because that's a confidence piece that makes them want to deal with your business and not go somewhere else.
Why would this be probably more particularly difficult when it comes to vehicle servicing?
There's a lot of information. Different makes and manufacturers have a lot of variation between what they consider a service. A lot of movement that we're seeing in the market now is going from, especially with Euro vehicles, to condition-based servicing versus time. So the old 10, 20, 30,000 K is out the window, and it's now driven by my car's told me that I need an oil change or I need a brake pad change. And even moving away, especially post-COVID, servicing isn't just by kilometre, but also by time as well. And that's becoming more prevalent as we're using cars less. You still need to change your oil, you still need to look after the car the same way.
That's quite interesting, because if you don't have your confidence in your car and you haven't used it for a while, servicing will return that confidence.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to understand there's different parts of the car that break down in different ways. While tires can sit for a while, oil breaks down just by sitting in the engine. And to look after the car in line with the specifications from that manufacturer, they can all be very, very different. And so you need a huge breadth of information and knowledge to make sure you're doing the right thing for the right customer at the right time on the right vehicle.
And when we talk about challenges, we've got clients and customers with vehicles. Some of them haven't driven them for 3 years after the last 5 years with what we've endured.
Another really big thing that's affecting workshops now as well is the availability of the information. You used to be able to get a paper logbook in the car and pull that out
in the glove box,
read all the details, and now I know what to do, when to do, and it's helping me with that information. A lot of manufacturers are moving to digital systems, so they don't provide that information in that paper format.
Right.
And that's affecting workshops that used to depend on that knowledge in that place to get that information.
Well, they say information's power.
It is absolutely indeed. And it's having that information, and not just for you in your workshop so you know you're doing the right thing, but so you can explain it to your customer and they know that you're doing the right thing, and they can have that trust and that confidence in you.
So tell me, what is Repco's Smart Quote and how does it help these workshops?
So Smart Quote's a add-in module that we built for Navigator Pro. It pulls in OEM sourced data around logbook service, timeframes and schedules, and presents that directly to the workshop. It takes that information, so the schedule of what needs to be done and when, applies parts, applies pricing, applies all the information that a workshop needs to generate a quote that's accurate for their business and making sure that they can manage margin. And it does it in 30 seconds, so all on the screen while I've got the customer on the phone, I can respond, I can say, this is exactly what I'm doing, exactly how much it's going to be, when do you want to book it in?
Well, the clients today want things now. We're in a digital age. It's how they consume food, entertainment, everything in between. And when they get to that service centre, and it might be a long time between going to the service centre, you're saying that this is going to speed up their decision-making process?
It gives the information to the workshop to aid the customer in that decision-making process. Instead of having to do a lot of research and understanding the specifics of what needs to happen to that customer and that vehicle, and then having to go back after to try and re-win the quote, they're able to just give everything over straight away. It's like having the library open to the exact right page with the exact right passage for you to read out without you having to think.
It creates a lot of authority from a service advising point of view to have that information as a proof-based decision opportunity for the client.
It's really important to have the right information so that when you do share it, you've got the confidence that it's correct, but also because it's not information that's not available to that customer. They're going to compare you against an OE workshop, and they have the benefit of having the badge on the building, so there's that intrinsic trust already in them, and being able to present the same offering but with your customized feel or your customized change in that better personal service. That's what's going to help aftermarket workshops win those customers over. And another really big important piece is making sure it's customized to that workshop. Allowing them to use their labor rates, their pricing, so they don't have to be standardized. It's letting them control their business, but just producing the result almost automatically for them. That way they're able to present if it's a specific type of vehicle that requires more in-depth knowledge, a different labor time, and it can calculate and do all that in seconds.
So it tailors?
Yes, absolutely. To anything for different workshops, it's the base information is this is what I've got to do. The workshop is still in control of how and what I charge to do it.
Well, a client likes personal service. They like it to be tailored, but they want it now, don't they? Sounds like it ticks the box.
It does, and it's trying to balance those two is really hard. To have something really built specific takes time, and to have something fast means it can't be specific, and this balances both really, really well.
Brilliant.
And then what we also do is pass through all of that information into the various workshop management systems. So you're not just quoting, but you can then convert that into a job card as a check sheet of these are the things that my technician has to do to make sure that they're following those instructions. They're not missing pieces, and you've got a really good record of this is what I've done to your car. So not just explaining it to win the customer over, but then also making sure that you're explaining it after the fact, because you're effectively trying to win the customer over for next time as well.
Yeah, well, For workshops that don't have Repco Smart Quote, how are they getting by?
So some of them will be returning to those paper logbooks that I talked about before that aren't available.
That's going to be fraught with danger.
You're correct. And the other one is reading straight off manufacturer websites. The problem there is it doesn't give them all of the information. It gives them the customer-facing piece of these are the main parts of the service, but often it doesn't give all the rest of the detail of those websites. They'd then go through and manually have to look up the parts for that vehicle. They'd have to calculate how long they think it would take, either looking off history or making assumptions. All of these little variations mean that quote very quickly becomes inaccurate, and an inaccurate quote can do two things. It can either lose the customer or it loses your margin.
And it also loses the workshop time spending doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
Because everything you just said then, I can just hear the clock going tick, 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 ticking down.
So much time, and what they'll do is after hours. It's either when you should be sitting in front with your family at home, they're working on the business, trying to quote all these customers that have come through during the day they've not had time to, or you're burning the time that you could be better engaging with new customers during the day by trying to manually do all these quotes.
Right. Now, you said the Repco Smart Quote can do a quote in 30 seconds, but what would it look like to do the similar quote, let's say a basic similar quote, manually?
So you'd have to look up the vehicle. So whether that's...
I'm going to keep a tally when you say it, right? So look up the vehicle.
So you're going to have to look up the vehicle. So that's make, model, all the information to make sure you're looking at the right car. You're then going to have to understand where to get that logbook service information from. So what am I doing and when? I've then got to go through and find out what parts I need to do. So that's finding the part number, the pricing, shopping and searching. Then you've got to understand how long it takes to do each of those service pieces, and then calculate and put that all together to present back to the customer.
So you've got 5 steps.
Yep.
You're not going to do that in 30 seconds.
No, absolutely not. And a lot of it is, you think through things like looking up part numbers with the variation on cars and different suppliers, different places.
Get the one number wrong?
Yeah, and the whole service is out. It's making sure that everything is done the right way. If you've looked up slightly the wrong car on the service, you could be doing the wrong work at the wrong time. If you looked up slightly the wrong car for parts, you could be trying to find a part and quote a part that's now completely wrong for that vehicle. It could charge more or it could charge less, and you've just made a really inaccurate quote that either loses you a customer or is losing your margin.
It's a rabbit hole answer, isn't it? Because every job's different.
Yep.
And, you know, if you've got it logged in Smart Quote and it is a 30-second quote, you can still go in there and manually make changes if you want to make changes. But the base information is there, ready to communicate. That's that's scary when you think about it.
And that's not including having to call that customer back. That's the really key value piece is you can do all of the work manually. There's nothing stopping you, but it's the time taken to then call that customer back and try and re-win them. By that time, if they've already quoted through somebody else, you've now got competition. Whereas if you're dealing with them and you're that first call, give them an answer, book them in, the customer's locked.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Yep. Why are approaches unsuitable and unsustainable like these for workshops?
Well, big one, quoting incorrectly. It's always going to damage a business.
Accuracy.
Yeah, accuracy. And being able to do that quickly means that, again, you're not competing against other workshops. If you can capture them in that first one, instead of letting them out of the net and then have to try and recapture and re-bring them back, it's going to be a lot easier to maintain. The really important one now, though, is the information itself. It changes regularly. So we have OE manufacturers that will release a vehicle to market, and they'll find, due to conditions, due to the way that it's being driven on the road, due to age and wear on certain parts, that service will actually change, and they will include other checks or other inspections that need to be done to make sure it suits warranty and to look after that car properly. They don't get to update the paper book that's in the car.
Right.
So you need a digital system that's bringing all that information in with all those updates so that you're not misquoting, you're not misaligning that service and not looking after that car the right way. A really great case in point was Jeep. One year, a few years ago, they actually changed the service 3 times on the Jeep Cherokee in a 12-month calendar period. So that's
a bit confusing.
Yeah, and if you don't have an up-to-date system, if you're working straight off that logbook, and all of them say it's only correct at time of printing, if you work straight off that logbook, or you work off even, I serviced a similar Jeep a week beforehand or a year beforehand, it's not going to be the same answer. And that's why having an up-to-date system that's putting all that information in front of you, you've got the confidence that you're doing the right thing and you're not putting your business at risk, because ultimately you're finding yourself liable by stamping that logbook saying, I've done exactly what was supposed to be done, but you didn't have the right information.
Yeah, fraught with danger.
Correct. And we've seen cases where vehicles like Mercedes need a transmission flush or a change that's not been captured initially and then it's been updated over time. The transmission then fails, it goes back to the dealership for warranty, and then there's an argument between the workshop and dealership about what's been done and what should have been. The cost to the business, not just if they pay out and fix the problem for the customer, but even reputational damage, it far outweighs the cost and the effort of putting in a system that makes sure you don't have these mistakes happen.
So I'm going to ask you, why do you think workshops are still working this way?
Fear of change. I think we've got a big culture of, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we constantly look at our customers and we expect them to understand the value of changing the oil before the engine seizes. And this is much the same thing, where we're talking to a new process, a new way of doing things before it creates an issue. It's really easy to talk to it afterwards, but change is just difficult and it's new.
Some of them seem to be stuck in the old traditional ways because they know that's what's worked then, meaning in their mind they think it's going to work now. But the reality of it is, as technology changes and the end users' wants and needs change, they are going to be forced to move.
Absolutely. And you have to treat every customer like it's a new customer. You can't accept that they've used you for 5 years or 10 years. Treat them every time as a new customer, so that way you're capturing them, you're giving them that full service. They might have that trust in your business, but as they change vehicles, we have customers who look after cars that are in a 5-year age gap. The customer goes to buy a brand new car, they want to take it back to the person that they trust. But if you don't have the information, you can't look after that car, you've lost that customer by default. So it's not just about winning new ones, it's keeping your current stable.
It's a little bit doctor-patient relationship, isn't it?
Yeah. You'd expect your doctor to keep up to date with new medicine and new treatments when you take it to them. We need to do the same things in our workshops for cars. We need to understand this is the new service, this is the new component, this is the new information. You can't just lean on the old ways because they're changing. The other really big piece is competition. The aftermarket is always competing with OE dealerships. They want to keep customers longer. They have service plans. There's a huge amount of really big effort that they put to show that genuine care to customer, and we need to make sure that we do the same. And we can't let them sit back and not have that opportunity.
Yeah. So what are some of the best tips you can share with our viewers about servicing and sales?
So there's a couple. Understanding your market. Look at what the OEs are doing. They're by default the benchmark that a customer is going to compare you against. Making sure you understand what their offers are and just checking in and looking through their websites, making sure that you know what they're doing, so that when a customer asks you or a customer questions your pricing or the inclusions, that you can explain the difference. All of them do it differently, and so it's worth just spending that little bit of time once a month going in and just checking and keeping up to date. Is they're going to change their offer, you're aware of it, you can adapt and change yours too. And explain the detail to the customer. You've got all this great information in front of you that's telling you exactly what you need to do to look after the customer. Share it with them. Tell them all the different points that you're checking, how many things that you have to do to make sure that that car's there. Don't just give them a price, because the moment that you give them a price and you just end up fighting on price, that's where you get dragged into competition with people that aren't providing that full service. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage. Sharing that information is valuable.
Well, they're in front of you, they're asking for a service. You're going to explain what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. But you need to do it in a way that they trust what you're going to say. Price should always be the last conversation.
Price is not value. You need to explain the value first. I've got all the information. I'm looking after your car the exact same way that an OE would as the people that made the car. I'm doing the exact same thing. And you can trust me in that. Pushing the price as the value proposition undermines the rest of that capability and that knowledge and ultimately trust, because anybody can be cheaper than anybody. It's not a long-term strategy for a workshop to contain and and retain a customer.
Yeah, it's interesting because they call it a service department, don't they?
Yep.
Because that's what it does. It
Service.
services not only the cars, but the customers.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got to make sure that that perception is aligned. You're looking after the customer's vehicle, but it's the customer's vehicle. Making sure that you understand the two are connected, but they need to be treated differently.
Yeah.
And setting pricing. When you have a system, don't just throw it in and hope that it works. Learn, test it, and really set up so it's using your labor rates and your cost pricing. Use those customizations that really reflect your business in that quote. It can do it in 30 seconds regardless either way, but if you're running it off the default pricing, that's not you. That's the default, and it's shared by too many people. Go through and spend that little bit of time, understand your labor, understand your charges, and it's ultimately really beneficial because you're making sure that you're making margin on all those parts that go through your business. And that's ultimately why everybody's in business.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So when we're inside the workshop and we're working with our efforts to retain the customers, what should we be doing in that space?
So I'd say making sure that the people that are talking to and serving the customer, either on the phone or when they're coming into the workshop, those people have a good knowledge of servicing. Not so much what to do and how it's done, but why some of those parts are changed. There's new parts on cars that are going to come through that the universal understanding of oil and filter isn't going to be there anymore. There's a lot of complexity, and being able to just talk to about what is that part and why is that more expensive. If you can answer the question straight away without having to get a technician out from the back of the office, it's going to give a lot more credibility to the workshop.
So I guess further to that, we're also talking about the priority of things to be repaired and that person at the service desk understanding what is the priority items.
Yeah, and being able to explain just the basics. Why do I have to change my oil after 12 months, even though I've not driven my car? Because the oil breaks down. Why do I need to check my brake fluid every 2 years if the car's not been run? Because it contains water and it's less effective and it's a safety component of the car. Being able to just give a little bit of an insight into what that is will really help build out and develop that confidence with the customer when you're providing that quote. And another big tip would be quote the next service. Everybody's focused on here's the first service. When you're handing the keys back to the customer, quickly quote the next service. Let them know beforehand if it's going to be a big one.
Yeah.
There's the opportunity that you can take a little bit of that sticker shock away. They call up in 12 months. It was $300 last time. Why is it $1,000 this time? You've got the opportunity. You've just finished their car. They trust you. Hey, so you know, the next service is actually quite a big one. We're going to have to do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
When they call back, you talk to me about it. You explain that detail, and it's not new information that then shocks and scares me and then makes me want to go somewhere else.
You desensitize them.
Yeah, it's just taking that shock away, just taking the sharp edge of $1,000 instead of $300, that they know it's coming and they can prepare for it even.
And you don't have it the next time they show up at the desk going, how much is it going to be? Because they go, oh, Zach, hi, how are you? Here's the car. Major service, they know.
Yep.
It's not a bad way of building rapport as well.
Yeah, correct. And you're showing that genuine care. We're not just doing this one time to get you out the door and see you later. It's we want to see you back in 12 months. Come to us, you can trust us, and here's the information.
That's the customer service bit, isn't it?
Absolutely. And a final one is look at all the systems that are coming through. Technology is changing in vehicles a lot, and there's some vehicles that will automate service reminders and then send them to the customer. So they'll pop up on the dash and say, hey, your service is due. Do you want to call and book it in? One example is mid-2010 Mazdas. You can actually go in on that car and change the workshop name to be your workshop and your phone number. So when the car pops up and says, hey, your service is due, do you want to book it in? The customer hits call and it calls you, not the dealership.
Yeah, and that's technology, isn't it? Yeah, that's brilliant. What is it, Nike are doing it now for a range of shoes? When you've logged X amount of steps,
they'll ping you and tell you.
They'll call you up and say your shoes have exceeded the effective running range. My missus is a runner. Yeah. Please head to this store for your free trial fitting of the new shoe.
And this is where you'd think for automotive that was just understood. It was, you know, we have to do this work.
So where can our viewers go to learn more or perhaps subscribe to Repco SmartQuote?
So repcotrade.com.au has pages dedicated to talking more about SmartQuote, a lot of the other features that we have there, as well as updates that we make to the system to continue and improve. But a really great resource is actually talking to our Repco team, either your account manager or your store team. Our account managers have SmartQuote installed on their iPads. They can actually show you in your workshop and do a demo, run you through a car that's on the hoist and show you exactly how to do it. And you can line it up exactly with what you're doing in the workshop today versus this is what it could look like in future. The final thing is subscribe for a trial. We have a 30-day free trial, full system capability, and we don't lock anybody in. So after the 30 days, we actively turn it off, and then that's your opportunity to come back and say, hey, I want to keep doing it or not. We're not trying to push something onto workshops and capture them or keep them contained into something they don't need. It's purely have a go, have a play. That's the best way to experience it.
A 30-day trial would be really good for a workshop to say, okay, we are learning this, give it to one service advisor and say, okay, just minor services. We want to see what the time frame of turnaround and acceptance is. That's not bad, 30 days.
Yep. Enough time to try out a couple of different vehicles. You're not just looking at the 3 that came in that day, but you're getting to look over a full breadth of range, and it gives you a real value proposition. You're understanding this is actually what it's going to do to my business. And again, we're not trying to lock anybody into it because it might not be for some workshops. They're not doing that much service, and that's understandable. But it gives them the opportunity to test it out inside their workshop so they get a real feel for it.
To the workshops that are currently using SmartQuote, because there's quite a few around, what would be some of the tips and tricks and maybe advice on to those workshops at the moment?
So going through and checking customizations, we've done a couple of things to really allow you to make
within the quote system.
Within the quote system. So you can set up by default, I do a wash and wax on the car, or we always use a petrol injector cleaner whenever we're doing a service. So there's things that add-ons that are value adds to what a standard logbook service is. Instead of just doing them, you can actually automate them so they're in the quote when you do that 30-second quote, and they show up and they're part of it. So you're still quoting that dead accurate number, regardless of whether it's a physical part that you're doing to a car or just a service. And that, again, really helps explain what's making you different and what's making your workshop stand out from the others.
So those that have an understanding of the system can really go in and expand that personalization within so that when they are doing the quotes, their quotes are going to the next level again.
Absolutely. So not just the pricing, which a lot of the customization we see around pricing, but it's also adding those differences that make you special. If there was data checks that you do or safety checks, and really just noting down some of those extra pieces that really add value to the customer and really show that you're looking after them. And then there's also the repair times quoting, which was added only a few years ago, but it does the same job of logbook quoting, but for repairs based on warranty repair time. We see a lot of customers that understand and use the logbook service quoting, but going through and using that repair quoting because it tailors to not just the part that you're pulling off the car, but then also the additional pieces.
Rightio, okay.
So if I'm doing a water pump, I've got to quote the water pump and the labor time to take that water pump off. But every time I'm touching a water pump, I'm losing coolant. So included in there should be, this is the capacity and how much that coolant's going to cost to replace and drain and flush. And also the options to add on other parts that are going to
idler bearing or something like that.
Or radiator hoses that are going to prolong the service of that part. If the water pump's gummed up or it's rusted through, you can be absolutely sure that the hoses are full of that same corrosion. Pulling those off because you've got to change them anyway and putting them back on for an extra $50 on that job gives more value to the customer because it's going to prolong that new water pump that you've just put on. You're not going to see that stuff flushed.
And those existing workshop users who are using SmartQuote, they're going to be in all different climates and areas of Australia. So there's going to be certain repairs that are going to be very topical to where they are from a geography point of view. So that personalisation really is a good tip to get in there, make it specific to the workshop.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really helps, again, the value the customer wants is your care for them and their car.
Yeah.
Not a generic answer. It's not a generic service. They want to deal with you as a workshop and you have that personal connection with them.
Yeah, right. Well, that certainly was a very deep dive in how to convert callers to customers. Thank you very much for coming on Evolve TV.
Thank you very much, Jason.
For everyone watching, we hope you've got a lot of value from this episode of Evolve TV. If you have any comments or questions about what we've discussed here today, go ahead and visit the Evolve Hub community to continue the conversation, and we look forward to seeing you for the next episode of Evolve TV.